Officers daring dash to save dying daughter after shocking vacation, panic in the ER. The sun was just a smudge on the horizon, its deep orange glow mingling with thick, black smoke that poured from the wreckage. Charred steel and shattered glass lay scattered across the asphalt. In that instant, everything changed. Officer Mark Davis's heart raced as he skidded to a halt, his breath catching in his throat. He felt an icy grip of terror. The one name that twisted his insides bubbled to the surface, Lily. His little girl. She was in that wreck, no doubt, and he felt an invisible hand squeeze his chest. Lily had just turned 8. It seemed like yesterday he was chasing her around the backyard. Her laughter still echoed in his mind, the kind of sound that could light up any dark moment. But now, it was drowned out by the chaos around him. Other cars were slowing down, people peering from their windows, their faces contorted with concern and disbelief. The sirens wailed in the distance, but they sounded far away like a haunting melody just beyond reach. He sprinted forward, feet pounding against the pavement like drums in a frantic cadence. His uniform felt heavy, each step weighed down by dread. Blood rushed through his ears, and the world narrowed to a pinhole focus on the twisted metal and the flickering flames licking at the sky. Caught in a bizarre time warp, every moment stretched into an eternity. Lily! He screamed, his voice hoarse, tearing through the smoky air. Those onlookers threw glances at each other, eyes wide, faces pale. Was it that serious? Had the little girl been inside? Whispers passed through the crowd like wildfire. Did you see the way that car flipped? The driver must have been speeding. They did not know. None of them knew the truth of the heartache unfolding. Deafening silence hung for a beat before Mark heard it, the unmistakable cries of a child, piercing through the nightmare like a shattered glass slashing at his heart. He bolted toward the sound, driven by pure instinct. Tears stung his eyes, but he wiped them away. Fear twisted in his gut. He could not imagine life without her, and he fought the rising panic, clenching his throat. Closer now, a figure slumped against a nearby tree, a woman, crumpled, shoulders shaking as she sobbed. Time slowed again. Was this Lily's mother? Did she know something he didn't? Mark's feet hesitated for a brief second, his heart hammering with urgency, then he propelled himself forward. But what if she couldn't help? What if he was too late? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The smog swirled like a ghost around him as he pushed the thoughts aside. He focused on the girl's voice, the wails wrapping around him, pulling him in. Desperation clawed at him as he shoved his way through the gathering crowd. He could see now, a paramedic was working frantically, sweat glistening on her brow. We need to stabilize her. She shouted. Her. Mark's breath caught, his heart raced as the realization hit him like a tidal wave. It was Lily. Would he be too late? Would it all come crashing down around him? He was so close, yet so far. The shadows danced on the edge of his vision, strange figures sometimes merging with reality, bubbling with uncertainty. As he reached the scene, Mark caught a glimpse of her, tiny and frail, laying on the stretcher. Her skin was pale, the fight in those wide eyes flickering like a dying flame. The panic swelled to a roar in his ears. Lily! He roared, but the world around him went silent. That heartbeat, hope hung by a thread. Would he be able to hold on to it? Would it slip through his fingers like grains of sand? The air crackled with unspoken tension, and he stood on the precipice of despair, the ground shifting beneath him like quicksand. Everything depended on what happened next. Mark lunged forward, urgency propelling him into the chaos as he reached for Lily's small, still form. He wanted to hold her, to soothe her, but the barrier of the paramedics pushed him back. "Let us work." One of them barked as they pressed the oxygen mask over her face, but that voice felt like a dagger to his heart. "Let me through. That's my daughter." Mark shouted, panic tightening every muscle in his body. He felt the eyes of the crowd on him, 1,000 whispers echoing the same thought. What if it was too late? The paramedics exchanged quick glances, determination etched into their faces. "We need to get her to the ER, now." Another voice shot through the fog of despair. It sent a chill down Mark's spine. The urgency screamed that time was running out, a relentless countdown ticking away his chances. Mark's mind teetered dangerously close to the edge. Thoughts spiraled. What if it was the last time he saw her? What if he never got to hold her, to kiss her goodnight again? The world blurred, voices muffled as they worked on Lily. He could barely focus on the swirl of activity as fear consumed him. "Don't you dare leave me, Lily," he whispered, gripping the stretcher with white-knuckled fervor. As they wheeled her away, Mark felt an overwhelming sense of helplessness. His feet moved instinctively, chasing the stretcher as it was loaded into the ambulance. He shouted after them, "I'm coming. I'm right here." It was a futile proclamation, a desperate cry dissolving into the sirens that pierced the night. "Officer, you can't go in." One of the paramedics blocked his path, an authoritative stare that felt like a brick wall slamming shut. "We have to stabilize her first." Mark's heart sank. How could he stay back? Panic flooded through him again. "No. You don't understand. I need to be there. She's my little girl." His voice echoed, raw and broken. The world around him became a haze, the ambulance fading into the distance, lights flashing in strobe-like rhythm. "Please," he pleaded, his breath ragged, "just tell me she'll be okay." "Sir, we're doing everything we can," the paramedic said, but there was no comfort in her words. Instead, her eyes shifted, unable to meet his gaze. That one detail hit him like a punch. It felt all the more damning. With every second that passed, dread coiled tighter in his chest, a suffocating grip. He fought the urge to collapse, his legs shaking beneath him. Desperation morphed into a frantic determination as a new thought sparked in his mind. If he could get to the hospital, he could see her. He could somehow be there for her. Without a second thought, Mark sprinted toward his squad car. The engine roared to life as he flung himself into the driver's seat, his heart racing faster than the vehicle's own engine. He floored it, tires screeching as he tore away from the wreckage, every red light, every stop sign, a blur as he raced against fate that he could almost hear Lily's laughter in the back of his mind, urging him on. "Hang on, baby. I'm coming." But a dark thought lingered. What if he was too late? The hospital loomed ahead, a sanctuary of hope and despair wrapped tightly together. A familiar tingle of fears flooded through him, but he pushed it down. Inside, nurses rushed past him, eyes darting with purpose, while chaos bubbled behind glass doors. "Where is my daughter?" he shouted, voice raw and demanding, as he burst through the entrance. "Lily Davis." A nurse paused, eyes wide with recognition, and his heart flipped. "Sir, please, just a moment." But the hesitation in her voice was disheartening. "Where is she?" His voice broke, cracking under the pressure of worry and desperation. Just when he thought he was losing control, scarcely understanding what lay ahead, a doctor emerged from the chaos, a frown etched deep into his features. "Officer Davis, we need to talk." The words hung heavy in the air, the weight of them suffocating. Mark's throat went dry as he faced the doctor, the churning anxiety boiling over. What had happened to his baby girl? Would he find out the truth that could shatter his world forever? As the doctor motioned for him to follow, dread clutched at Mark's heart once more. What awaited him behind those closed doors? Mark followed the doctor down the stark white hallway, each step echoing in his mind like a countdown. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sterile glow that felt both unreal and suffocating. He barely registered the passing nurses or the hurried conversations. His thoughts were locked onto one singular focus, Lily. Is she okay? He blurted out, his voice rough. Please, just tell me she's going to be all right. The doctor's face remained a careful mask, but Mark noticed the tension in his shoulders, the tight jawline. He could feel dread pooling in the pit of his stomach, heavy and sluggish, as they approached a set of double doors. The doctor glanced back at him, and for a moment, hope flickered, but it died quickly at the sight of the doctor's strained expression. Lily has sustained severe injuries, the doctor began, his tone measured but urgent. She's in critical condition. We're doing everything we can, but you need to understand it's touch and go right now. Mark felt the ground tilt beneath him. Touch and go. The words held an abyss of uncertainty. What does that even mean? You have to save her. A grim sympathy crossed the doctor's face. We can't determine how she'll respond. She's been stabilized for now, but we need to monitor her closely. The next few hours are crucial. Each word sent a fresh wave of anguish through Mark. He clenched his fists, a desperate attempt to channel the spiraling fear. You don't know my daughter. She is a fighter. She has to come back from this. Without waiting for a reply, he turned his back on the doctor, pushing through the doors and into the waiting area. A row of chairs sat empty, save for the nurse at the reception desk who looked up with fatigue etched onto her face. Where can I see her? He demanded, voice rising, raw with desperation. Sir, you can't go in yet. Please wait, I can't wait. She's in there alone, and I need to be with her. Before he could argue, the doctor appeared behind him, his expression unyielding. You need to calm down, Officer Davis. I understand you're frightened, do you? Mark interrupted, his rage spilling over. You're standing there in your calm little white coat while my little girl is fighting for her life. How am I supposed to calm down? Stern but understanding, the doctor gestured to the nearby chairs. You need to sit down and let us do our work. We'll update you as soon as we can. Mark inhaled deeply through his nose, fighting the swell of emotions threatening to choke him. He glanced toward the doors leading to the trauma unit, his heart pounding against his chest. He could feel it, the helplessness, the weight of every regret. If only he could trade places with Lily, take the pain, take the fear from her. Please, he said, desperation coloring every word. Just please keep me posted. The doctor nodded, already turning back toward the trauma area. As he walked away, Mark felt a tide of hopelessness rise again. He sank into a chair, head in his hands, the sterile smell of antiseptic washing over him. Time crawled. Minutes turned to hours, the clock on the wall ticked on, an unyielding reminder of life moving forward while everything about his reality crumbled. Each soft murmur from passing nurses heightened his anxiety, and soon, he found himself standing again, pacing the floor. A door swung open behind him, and he spun around, breath catching as he spotted a familiar figure. Sarah, his partner from the force, rushed in, her expression tight with concern. Mark. She called, striding toward him. What is going on? I heard about the accident. With her words, everything began to blur again. The reality of what lay ahead loomed like dark clouds ready to explode. Lily, he stammered. She is. They don't know if she is going to make it. A look of shock crossed Sarah's face, it cut deep. But before she could respond, another nurse emerged from the trauma area, rushing past, her face pale. Mark's heart sank as she paused long enough to pull the door shut behind her, sending an unsettling silence creeping into the room. What did that mean? Mark. Sarah's voice broke through his daze, and he turned to meet her gaze. We need to talk about what's next. But as he looked back, the pit in his stomach churned violently. What could possibly be next? Would he be saying goodbye before he had a chance to say I love you one last time? As the tension built, Mark's breath quickened. What shocking truth awaited him in Lily's battle for life? Would they find the strength to face whatever came next? Mark's heart raced as the sterile walls of the waiting area closed in around him. The whispers of the nurses and the telephones ringing in the distance faded into a drone. He turned to Sarah, desperation painted on his face. "What do we do, Sarah? If there is something we can," she held up her hands, grounding him. "First, we need information. We need to know what happened." He clenched his jaw, the weight of helplessness heavy on his chest. He opened his mouth to respond but was cut off by the sudden ringing of the hospital phone, the shrill sound slicing through the tension. Mark turned sharply toward the reception desk, where the nurse hastily answered it, her face draining of color with each passing moment. Sarah's voice was steady, but her eyes mirrored the storm brewing inside him. "What do we know about the accident?" "Just that it was bad. A hit and run, I think." The words felt thick and bitter in his mouth. "They didn't tell me much. Just she's fighting for her life." A knot twisted in his stomach as he remembered Lily's laughter from that morning, the way her eyes sparkled with mischief. She was so excited about her trip to just go. The gnawing regret clawed at him, suffocating each thought of what lay ahead. Without warning, the nurse from before rushed down the hallway, her steps hurried. Mark's heart leaped, and he shot out of his chair, crossing the few steps between them in seconds. "Please, what is going on? Is she?" "Sir," she said, her voice trembling with barely contained urgency. "We need an emergency contact. You need to answer some questions." Mark's breaths came in quick bursts. "I am her contact. Just tell me." She held up her hands as if trying to gesture for him to calm down. "Sir, you need to understand that we've got a situation. The doctor will explain everything." "No. He didn't want to explain everything, he wanted good news." He nodded but felt his resolve crumble. "Is she getting worse?" "I can't say. I need you to just wait." She hesitated. "I'm sorry." That finality hung in the air like a guillotine poised to drop. Mark felt himself getting dizzy. "Sarah," he gasped, grabbing her arm, "it can't end like this. I can't handle it." Sarah's eyes softened as she tightened her grip on his arm, grounding him. "Remember, Mark. She's a fighter. We can't give up hope. Hope doesn't change the reality of the situation." He rasped, the desperation coming off him in waves. The nurse backed away, mumbling something about needing to check on Lily, and with her departure, the silence rushed back in. Shadows flickered against the walls as Mark paced again, his mind racing through dark scenarios. Sudden voices erupted from the hallway. A group of doctors and nurses rushed down, one carrying a heavy medical bag and another clutching a clipboard tightly. Mark's heart plummeted. He felt his chest tighten, each beat a frantic tattoo reminding him of Lily's precarious turmoil. "Mark," Sarah said, urgency coating her voice. "I think we need to," but he didn't want to hear it. He shook his head, swallowing hard against the lump in his throat. The doctor stepped into view, and Mark froze. "Officer Davis?" The doctor called out, gesturing for him to come closer. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, Mark pushed through, feeling the eyes of everyone in the waiting area boring into him. "What is happening? Is she okay?" he demanded, panting. The doctor's face was serious, a storm of emotions swirling in his eyes. "We need to talk. It's about Lily." Mark's stomach dropped. The weight of the moment hung heavily in the sterile air. What could the doctor possibly say that would send a shiver of dread down his spine like this? And behind that door, what awaited them? Was there still time, or was it too late to make sense of the past? As the doctor began to speak, a new dread clawed at Mark's heart. Would this be the moment that changed everything forever? Mark's breath caught in his throat as the doctor's lips parted, ready to unleash words that could shatter everything. He leaned forward, willing himself to absorb whatever came next. His entire world hinged on those few syllables. "Lily suffered severe trauma during the accident," the doctor began, his voice grave. "Her vital signs are unstable. We're doing everything we can, but she's in critical condition." Panic ignited in Mark's chest. "What do you mean?" critical. What does that even, sir? The doctor interrupted, pushing a hand up as if trying to physically hold back the tide of despair. We need to stabilize her. But you need to know. He hesitated, then pressed on, there's a possibility she may need surgery. The next few hours are crucial. Mark's knees felt weak, his mind racing at the implications. No. No, there has to be something, anything. She's strong. She'll fight through this. Sarah shifted closer to him, her face pale. Mark, listen to the doctor. We can't ignore what they're saying. We need to prepare ourselves. Prepare. For what? To lose her. His voice cracked, the helplessness roiling within him. I can't do this. I can't just stand here while Mark, you have to focus, the doctor interjected sharply. If Lily pulls through, we need you here. We'll keep you updated, but where is she? Mark's words came out in a choking rush. I need to see her. Please, I have to be with her. Visiting hours are, the doctor began, but Mark was already on the move. He couldn't stand by while Lily lay battling for breath behind those unforgiving doors. Mark. Sarah called after him, urgency lacing her tone. Wait. We need to stay together. But he didn't hear her. The hospital corridor blurred around him as he sprinted, dodging doctors and nurses. He rounded a corner and skidded to a halt outside the double doors marked emergency. The sight of a nurse slipping inside sent a cold shiver down his spine. Excuse me. He shouted, but she didn't look back. He pushed against the door, the metal cold and unyielding beneath his hands. As he breached the threshold, the cacophony of machines blaring and footsteps pounding reverberated through the air like a desperate beat matching his pulse. Inside, he spotted Lily's still figure beneath fluorescent lights, surrounded by a team of medical professionals hustling to save her. Each breath she took felt like a battle he could only watch from the sidelines. Lily. The cry escaped him, raw and heart-wrenching, but no one turned. Their focus was solely on her. Anxiety twisted in his gut. Someone, please. He shouted, desperation clinging to his throat. I'm her father. I need to be with her. A doctor finally turned, frowning. You need to step back. We can't have you know. The reality of the situation crashed over Mark like a tidal wave. I want to leave her. Not again. Just then, a figure rushed in beside him, and he turned to see Sarah standing there, eyes wide. Mark, we need to think rationally. Overwhelming them won't help her. But the medical team was oblivious to everything except the task before them. One of the nurses glanced up and, for a moment, their eyes locked. Mark saw something flicker in hers, an understanding, a glimmer of shared fear. The doctor approached, his voice steady but filled with urgency. If you want to help, you can do so by waiting outside. We need this space to work. Mark's heart raced. This was a chance, a decision, the moment to choose to fight for her. What if I don't want to wait? What if I can't stand by and watch? Then you risk losing the only opportunity to save her, the doctor replied, and those words hit like ice water. His heart sank. He felt the walls of the room closing in, the panic stirring around him like a storm. Each beat of his heart struck with the sickening realization that if his instincts were right, this was just the beginning of a battle far bigger than he imagined. As he wrestled with the agony of choice, the muffled sound of a nearby announcement hunted him, ominously echoing through the hospital. It was a familiar male voice, calling for immediate assistance. The surge of hope collided with fear, igniting a spark of rage within him. What was happening? Should he stay or fight? Mark turned to Sarah, unable to mask his dread. I can't lose her, not like this. And just as he was about to make a decision, the power suddenly flickered in the hospital. The lights dimmed, shadows dancing in eerie flickers that sent chills up his spine. What was happening now? Outside, a siren wailed in the distance, growing louder and sounding far too close for comfort. What was that? Sarah whispered, fear gripping her voice. Mark's mind raced with questions. Should he head back to Lily? Or check what chaos awaited outside? One thing was clear: they were in the heart of a nightmare, and it hadn't even begun to unfold yet. As dread coiled tight in his chest, Mark took a deep breath, ready to make a choice that could change everything forever. With a loud crash, the lights flickered violently, plunging the corridor into a strobe-like chaos. Mark felt an electric charge of panic race through him. His heart pounded against his ribs, each thud screaming at him to take action. Mark. Sarah's voice trembled, the fear contagious as she grasped his arm. We need to get out of here. Something's wrong. But his thoughts were fixed on Lily. He couldn't just walk away. Every fiber of his being screamed for him to stay by her side. No. I can't leave her. I need to know what's happening with Lily. Before Sarah could respond, a loud boom echoed through the hospital, rattling the windows. Mark's breath hitched as the lights flickered again, then dimmed further, causing a chilling uncertainty to settle in the air. A nurse burst through the double doors, her face a mask of worry. We need to move now. There's an emergency situation in the hospital. Emergency? What kind? Mark demanded, pressing closer, desperation clawing at him. There's a security breach. An armed intruder may have entered the building. The nurse's words struck hard, sending shockwaves through him. We can't stay here. Please, we need to evacuate. The words hung heavy between them. Mark's blood ran cold as reality crashed over him. How could this be happening? The spikes of fear in the atmosphere were palpable, and each breath he took felt suffocated by impending chaos. Mark, we have to go. Now. Sarah urged. She looked terrified, the idea of the unknown closing in around them. Mark hesitated, torn between the graphic realities of the hospital and the fear for Lily's safety. But what about Lily? I can't trust me, the nurse interrupted, her voice firm but urgent. We'll be back to check on her. But now, we have to get to safety. We don't know where he is or what he wants. The word safety ignited a wild instinct in him, but his mind floated back to Lily. Would she be okay alone? He wrestled with the torment of leaving his daughter behind again. A low, reverberating thud echoed through the hospital, further tearing at his heart. His instincts screamed, and in that instant, every moment in his life collided, the dream of watching her grow, the innocent laughter, the hope for a family. Mark. Sarah's voice broke through the chaos, urgency pressing her words. We have to go. Now. Unable to bear it any longer, he caught onto Sarah's hand. Each step they took felt surreal, ice forming in his veins as they sprinted down the corridor. The sounds of the hospital faded behind, replaced by dread-laden uncertainty. Please, let Lily be safe. Turning a corner, they entered a waiting area where other families huddled together, confusion and fear clouding the air. Mark's heart raced as he scanned their faces, eyes wild with anticipation and terror. He felt the weight of time slipping, as if each second was a savage countdown. The loudspeaker blared, all personnel and patients must evacuate immediately. Repeat, there is an active shooter in the building. Please follow emergency protocols. That was it. The reality hit hard, as fear clawed at his insides like a beast. He pulled Sarah close, their breaths mingling in the cool air thick with tension. What do we do now? Before she could answer, a figure dashed past them. Battered and frantic, it was a nurse who managed to escape chaos. Eyes wide, she shouted, this way. Follow me. Gripping Sarah's wrist tighter, Mark darted after her. Each pounding footstep echoed the urgency in his heart, but every step also pressed against the fear that if he left Lily, what if something happened? The nurse led them through a set of double doors toward the emergency exit, where the sounds of chaos grew louder. Mark had never felt more trapped than in this moment, the crushing weight of choosing safety over the love of his life. Could he really just walk away? A piercing scream shattered the air, jolting him painfully. Panic exploded within him, calling every ounce of primal instinct to action. Together with every ounce of courage, Mark pushed through the door, stepping out into the unknown with Sarah trailing close. But in the back of his mind, he understood one frightening thing: the nightmare had only just begun. As they burst outside into the indifferent night, a chilling realization dawned: the shooter was still inside. Where's Lily? He screamed, his heart pounding for her safety, his anxiety reaching a breaking point. What if they've taken her? Sarah whispered, eyes wide with terror. And the darkness loomed ahead, the world churning with questions that demanded answers. Would they ever find her? Mark took a deep breath, the panic gripping him, refusing to let go. He couldn't even begin to fathom what would happen next, but he knew one thing for certain: the clock was ticking, and the fight wasn't over yet. Mark stumbled into the chaos outside, his vision blurred as adrenaline surged through his veins. The parking lot was littered with people, families, nurses, and doctors, all scrambling in disarray. Car alarms blared incessantly, merging with distant shouts and sirens. It was a nightmare, one he couldn't wake from. Where's the ambulance? He shouted, scanning for flashing lights. There. Sarah pointed toward the far end. An ambulance was parked, but it was surrounded by a thickening crowd, all straining against the chaos that had erupted in the hospital. We need to get to it. With purpose, Mark pushed forward, forcing his way through a crush of frightened faces. Each person's expression echoed his own: confusion, fear, hopelessness. The world felt like it was spinning off its axis, and the urgent question remained burned in his gut: where was Lily? Mark. Sarah's voice broke his concentration. We can't just stand here. I can't leave her. His voice cracked, filled with raw emotion. She needs me. But as he looked back toward the entrance of the hospital, a shiver traveled down his spine. The very place that housed his daughter had now become a fortress of terror. Every second felt like an eternity as a voice called out, twisting through the chaos. Stay back. Stay back. Mark turned, heart racing, seeking the source of the chaos. Suddenly, he saw a figure emerging from the hospital doors. It wasn't the nurse. This person was cloaked in shadow, a dark silhouette contrasting the blinding fluorescent lights behind them. Mark. Sarah hissed, grabbing his arm. Get down. In a split second, Mark's instincts kicked in. He dropped to the asphalt, barely a heartbeat before the sound of a gunshot echoed like thunder. The figure stumbled out, disheveled and frantic, but alive. The air tightened around them as the scene unfolded in terrifying slow motion. Mark's heart nearly stopped when he recognized her. Lily. He screamed, adrenaline propelling him forward as he darted toward the figure. But it wasn't Lily. The nurse from before staggered, blood staining her scrubs. Run. She gasped, desperation in her eyes, but the shadow loomed closer. Get out, it's not safe. A new wave of fear exploded within Mark. He felt helpless, frozen, as she fell to the ground, a small whimper escaping her lips. He looked around, desperate for a path. Help her. He yelled. She needs help. No. Sarah pulled at him again. We can't stay. But Mark was unwilling to budge. I can't leave her. She's hurt. Mark, look. Sarah pointed behind him. The crowd was scattering in all directions, and the sound of sirens was growing urgent, but it was the figure unseen now, just beyond sight, that made Mark's stomach twist. Another gunshot fired, sending a wave of panic rippling through the crowd. Mark could see people falling, scattering, and instinctively he stepped back, pulling Sarah with him. Get to safety. He shouted to anyone who would listen. But his eyes never left the entrance. Each second felt like a countdown to something dire. Could Lily still be inside? He could feel bile rising in his throat. Mark. Sarah's voice trembled, snapping him back to reality. We need to go now. Reluctantly, he turned to her, the frustration and fear warring within him. But if she's in there as if on cue, the sounds of chaos escalated behind them. A series of sharp cracks, a round of gunfire. Mark felt his heart leap into his throat. He couldn't let anyone else get hurt. But leaving felt wrong. Mark! Sarah yelled again, pulling him away from the nurse. The streetlights flickered ominously, as if mirroring the dread settling over them. Around them, people were fleeing, screams ricocheting through the night like errant bullets. He finally took a deep breath, forcing himself to look toward the ambulance that still loomed in the distance. Time was slipping through his fingers. He felt it. He had to choose. The nightmare was only beginning, and Mark knew in his gut that something was coming, a dark choice that would define everything. Let us go. He yelled to Sarah, racing toward the ambulance, but a chilling sense of foreboding whispered that their nightmare was far from over. What awaited them next? The question hung heavy in the air as they pressed on, minds racing. Would they find Lily, or just more chaos? The sirens screamed from all directions, drowning out the tumult of Mark's racing heart. He and Sarah dashed toward the ambulance, the weight of uncertainty crashing down on them like stones. Mark's focus narrowed, adrenaline sharpening his senses. They had to get away from the inferno unfolding behind them. Move, move. Sarah urged, her voice strained with panic. As they neared the ambulance, Mark glimpsed a strobe of red and blue lights reflecting off the pavement, casting eerie shadows that flickered like the memories of happier times. But there was no time for nostalgia. He couldn't shake the image of the nurse, the terror in her eyes, nor the unmistakable certainty that Lily was still in there, alone in her hospital bed. Once at the ambulance, Mark jumped up to the back, opening the doors to find two paramedics inside, working frantically. We need help. Mark's voice cracked before he could finish. The scene around him offered no comfort, the chaos was palpable, thickening the air. Get in. One of the paramedics barked, tossing supplies into a bag with urgency. We're evacuating the ER. You two can ride with us. Wait. My daughter, she's in there. Mark's eyes pleaded, but the frantic urgency on the paramedic's face told him this was a situation beyond comprehension. No time. We need to go. Now. Mark exchanged a quick glance with Sarah, fear mounting as she nodded. The crowd was surging, people were yelling and clutching their loved ones like lifelines. He could feel the panic radiating off Sarah, but he gripped her hand tighter, determined not to let go. Just then, a new sound cut through the chaos, the low growl of a vehicle engine approaching fast. Heads turned, people murmured anxiously. Mark instinctively stepped in front of Sarah, positioning himself as a shield. Hard edges formed around an all-too-familiar figure speeding through the throng, the unmistakable glare of a dark SUV that seemed almost alive in its pursuit. Get back! A voice boomed. It was an officer, sprinting toward them, waving his arms in wild gestures. Is this cut off or what? He shouted to the paramedics, but all eyes were glued to the SUV, now careening toward them as if it had no other destination. Step aside. The officer fumbled, pulling his service weapon from its holster. The sight of the firearm sent tremors racing through Mark. Mark, we can't stand here. Sarah screamed, and the urgency in her voice jolted him. The SUV skidded to a halt, tires screaming against asphalt. Doors burst open as armed men poured out, yelling in aggression, chaos reigniting in an instant. The officer aimed his weapon directly at them, his expression hardened with determination. Get them inside, now. In that moment, Mark had never felt so torn. He wanted to fight for Lily but knew they were in greater danger than he could comprehend. Together, they obeyed, rushing into the ambulance just as the officers shouted commands. The rear doors slammed shut, the paramedics already inside banging on the side to signal the driver to leave. Mark's heart raced as the sounds of gunfire erupted just outside, sporadic and frantic, shattering the tension like glass. The ambulance lurched forward, pulling them away from the scene, but his mind remained tethered to the chaos they left behind. Lily was still there, they couldn't simply leave. As the wheels rolled into the night, he glanced at Sarah. Her face was pale, eyes wide with fear. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words failed. Just as they rounded the corner, the radio inside the ambulance crackled to life, haunting them with hushed words from dispatch. Hostage situation, ongoing, patients unaccounted for. His stomach twisted, dread pooling deep. They were just running from trouble, but it felt like it was hunting them. What are we going to do? He whispered, barely containing the rising panic. Behind them, the echoes of sirens grew fainter, but new shadows loomed larger. Whatever had happened that night was far from over, and now a chilling realization dawned on Mark: they weren't safe, not yet. Next up, we find her. No matter the cost, Sarah said, determination piercing through the fear, but another sinister thought lingered: what if they weren't ready for the truth waiting for them? Mark nodded, heart pounding, eyes fixed ahead. The nightmare was far from finished. Would they uncover the deepest horrors of the hospital, or was something darker still waiting in the wings? The ambulance careened through the night, sirens blaring, as the world outside faded into a blur. Every bump in the road jolted Mark, reminding him of the urgency pulsing through his veins. He could barely breathe, his mind a whirlwind of confusion and dread. "Please, just drive faster," he urged the paramedic beside him, his voice barely more than a desperate whimper. "Relax. We're doing all we can." The paramedic snapped, eyes glued to the road ahead. Mark's frustration boiled just beneath the surface. Relax? How could he when Lily's life hung in the balance? "Mark," Sarah whispered, her hand trembling in his. "We have to think. What is going on at that hospital? Why were they evacuating?" Her words cut through the haze, igniting a flicker of determination. "I don't know, but we can't just let them handle it. We have to go back. We have to find her." "Listen," Sarah said firmly, "if we head back there, we'll be right in the action where the police are dealing with whatever this is. If there's chaos, we could easily end up caught in the crossfire." Holding Sarah's gaze, Mark saw the fear that mirrored his own. "And what if we don't? What if we leave her behind?" A heavy silence settled in the ambulance, thick with unsaid fears. The clash of emergency lights from the dashboard cast ghostly reflections around them. Suddenly, the radio crackled again, interrupting their fraught debate. "Multiple casualties at St. Mary's, chaos, shooter on the premises," demands made. Each word pierced Mark's heart like a dagger. It seemed impossible. Their hospital, where peace once reigned, now transformed into a war zone. Panic gripped his chest, squeezing tighter. Mark glanced over at the paramedic, who was focused on the road but couldn't hide the anxiety flickering in his eyes. "What do we know about the situation?" Mark demanded, urgency coating his voice. "We'll brief you when we get to the next station," the paramedic replied curtly, face taut. "For now, just hold tight." "Not good enough." Mark's gaze landed on Sarah. "I can't just sit here. We have to do something. Mark, please, think logically." "You can't just run into." Sarah's words were cut short by a sudden lurch in the ambulance, and an explosion of sound rocked them. The driver cursed, swerving sharply, desperately trying to maintain control. It felt like they were slipping into an abyss where all hope waned. In the rearview mirror, Mark saw headlights pushing forward through the darkness, a massive vehicle that matched their speed. "That's it." Mark gasped, realization striking. "They found us." "Who?" Sarah shouted, panic back in her voice. Before he could answer, the ambulance jolted to a halt, the sirens abruptly silencing as the driver hit the brakes hard. "Everyone out!" the paramedic yelled, lunging for the door, urgency in every ounce of his being. "They're coming." Mark felt adrenaline rush through him, time slowing as he grabbed Sarah's hand, but a thought cut deeper than physical panic. What if they were stepping out into a trap? With the doors flung open, dark silhouettes dashed toward them. Gunfire erupted again, echoing in the stillness of the night. Mark's heart raced as he pushed Sarah behind him, instinct taking over. "You need to run," he shouted, doubt clawing at his insides. "We can't stay here." But as gunfire erupted and chaos swallowed them, one thought nagged at the back of his mind: was it safer to escape or face whatever hell awaited them in the shadows? A flash caught his eye, someone darting through the chaos. A face resembling his wife's. "Sarah, wait!" he cried, but the moment passed in a heartbeat. As the silhouettes closed in, he had to wonder what kind of confrontation awaited him. What lay beyond that door? And who was out there waiting for their chance? The night had turned treacherous, and they had no idea whether they'd emerge alive or if the horrors of that hospital had followed them in. Mark stumbled out of the ambulance, heart racing, a mix of confusion and terror swirling inside him. The world outside was chaos, screaming, shouts, and the crack of gunfire filled the air. Sarah clung to his arm, eyes wide with fear. "Mark!" she shouted, trying to pull him back. "We need to find Lily." "We will." He yelled back, but despair washed over him. The thought of leaving her behind ate at him. His little girl was still somewhere in that nightmare, and he had to get to her. As they stepped into the fray, Mark's instincts kicked in. He needed to protect Sarah and find Lily. Those two thoughts battled like raging fires, consuming every ounce of his attention. Cries echoed around them, a mixture of terror and despair. "Follow me," urged a nearby officer, urgency lining his voice. Mark nodded instinctively, grasping Sarah's hand tighter as they pushed forward, desperate to escape the chaos. They ducked behind a nearby cruiser, trying to catch their breath. The sight of bloodied paramedics, wounded figures, and frantic families paralyzed Mark. "What is happening?" he gasped, searching for answers. But no one had any. They were all just running, fleeing, trying to survive the unknown. "Over there!" Sarah shouted, her voice rising above the din as she pointed toward a group of nurses leading a few children away from the scene. Mark's heart leaped. Lily could be with them, he said, forcing his legs to carry him faster. They darted through the chaos, dodging fallen bodies and clangs of chaos resonating around them. "Mark, wait!" Sarah called. But he couldn't. Not now. He had to get to Lily. They pressed on, a whirlwind of faces blurring past until they reached the gathering. "Is there a Lily Davis here?" he shouted, frantic. The nurses were tending to the children, their faces a mix of fear and determination. One of them turned, eyes glancing at them but not recognizing the gravity behind their question. "We're evacuating the building. Please, this way." "Lily!" Mark cried, the need surging through him, pushing Sarah to stay close as they fought their way through. "Mark!" Sarah pulled him back, pointing. "It's another exit." They changed course, rushing down a narrow hallway. Just ahead, the emergency exit doors loomed, but the gunfire echoed closer, panic settling deep. Mark hesitated, listening. "It's not safe. We have to find her." "Mark, we might get caught in crossfire." "The order is to evacuate." The words churned in his gut, tightening every inch of him. But the thought of Lily alone hurt more. Yet another voice broke through the pandemonium, a clear authoritative shout from across the floor, calling out everyone out. "Now!" Mark pushed through the doors, stepping into the world outside, stunned as the reality of the surrounding scene sunk in. People were sobbing, families embracing, others tending to the injured. But he couldn't stop looking for that familiar face, the one that ignited every ounce of joy in him. "Lily!" he belted, the desperation deepening with each shout. But the faces around him showed nothing. He could see the fear mirrored in everyone else. "Lily!" And then, piercing through the noise, he heard it soft, weak, but unmistakably her voice. Panic surged through him, heart racing anew as he chased the sound. It propelled him forward, tearing through the crowd that he pushed past people, his breath coming in frantic gasps. Lily. He felt around him a mixture of the surreal. This was his daughter's world in danger. Suddenly he saw her. She lay on a makeshift bed, covered with a blanket, her small frame still and pale. No! He cried, rushing forward, collapsing to his knees beside her. Sir, please. A nurse insisted, trying to block him, but he brushed past her, heart hammering. Lily. I'm here. Daddy's here. The commotion faded. He grasped her tiny hand, feeling the fragility of life splaying out in front of him. Stay with me, baby. You can't leave me. Do you hear me? The nurse looked grim, realizing the dire situation they faced, but Mark didn't care. He only focused on her face, frail and pale, as he squeezed her hand tighter. Lily, please, squeeze my hand if you can hear me. Fight, sweetheart. Just fight. He watched as her eyelids fluttered, the slightest movement, but it was enough to ignite that flicker of hope within him. She squeezed back, tears streamed down Mark's face as he leaned close. That's it. I'm right here. Help is coming, baby. You will be okay. Around him, the chaos began to settle into something quieter. Sirens wailed in the distance, a haunting reminder of what had just transpired, but in that moment, time stood still. It was just them. Hope echoed in the silence between breaths. Mark, Sarah finally breathed out beside him. We're going to get her out of here. He nodded, hardly able to speak, the raw emotions choking him up. The world may have been a battlefield, but right here was his sanctuary. They would accompany Lily through this ordeal, no matter the cost. That was his promise. Daddy's here, Lily, he whispered as they fortified a sense of togetherness under the storm's remnants, ready to face whatever came next with unwavering strength, armed with love and hope. As the night stretched on, he knew it wouldn't be easy. There were battles to come, but they would be fought together, the three of them. With a final squeeze of her small hand, Mark's fierce resolve solidified. They would overcome this. He wouldn't have it any other way, but before he could dwell on the fight ahead, one final thought pierced the chaos like an arrow. Where were the intruders? That question hung heavily in the air, casting a shadow over their fragile triumph. Mark. Sarah's urgency pricked his concentration. We need to just hold on to her. He shouted, lifting his chin defiantly. Whatever awaited them next, this was their moment, and he wouldn't let fear consume them again. Let us move, he said with newfound power, ready to reclaim their lives. Together, they would step back into the chaos, making a stand, weaving through the storm of uncertainty the night had unleashed upon them, and as they moved forward together, one thing was certain: they were not done fighting yet. Now here's where I need you to do something incredible. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories coming your way. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and keep these stories alive. Flood the comments section with your emotional reactions and theories about the ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this conclusion. True fans like you understand the importance of supporting our channel through these actions.